Well, hey, podcast listeners, it's TJ.
And Julie.
And in episode 64 of the Pixar Post podcast, we're going to talk about Toy Story 4 news. We're going to talk about Lightning McQueen's Racing Academy. We're going to talk about an interview we did with Kelly Bonbright, who is a script supervisor at Pixar. We focused mostly on her work as the script supervisor for Incredibles 2.
That's hard to say.
Script supervisor, supervised. Yeah, there's lots of S's going on there. All right, so... You know, whenever these things kick off, I got you with some good trivia last time.
Oh, geez.
When we start these off, we have to start with some Pixar trivia. First question, which character is that?
That's Alakazam.
Okay, all right.
From Presto.
Yes. And
Your favorite short.
And I've got Presto on the brain because if you haven't seen it already, we did our full video and photo review of the Presto Funko vinyl figure. That was a limited edition one. Comes in a super cool hat box. It's about 4 inches tall by about 4 inches wide. So if you haven't seen that video, go ahead and check that out. But I got Presto on the brain. So I have 3 questions for you, and they are all geared towards the short, Pixar's best short in my opinion, Presto.
Okay.
So
I'm ready.
All right.
Now, granted, it's almost 1 a.m. and we're recording this, and I maybe got 3 to 4 hours of sleep last night. So we'll see how on it I am.
There you go.
That's my inner mind thinking.
Quit bragging.
Yeah.
No, actually, I will say, I'm going to put it right out there that the first question I think is easy.
Okay. Oh.
The second and third I think are... The third is nearly impossible. The second is hard, but not impossible.
Okay.
Okay. So the first one, from an Easter egg standpoint, who are the Muppet characters who make an appearance in the short film?
Oh, the 2 old guys.
What are their names?
Oh, man. I'm thinking of Muppet Babies right now because
They didn't.
Leo and I watched it, and they're the neighbors. Of the new,
the neighbors?
They're the new re-released on Disney Junior.
Ooh, that's awesome.
Oh man, what are their names?
Statler
and Waldorf.
Waldorf, yes, absolutely. Statler and Waldorf, which that's a hard one to say. Like in my mind, I always say Wardorf instead of Waldorf. I don't know, but regardless,
I got that 75% right.
I'll give you that one.
Okay,
I'll give you that one. Let's see how you do in this next one. Presto is the magician. Mm-hmm. Alakazam is the rabbit. But what is Presto's last name?
Fujili or something like that.
No, you're thinking of Tony Fucile, who works at Pixar.
I think I am. Presto. M something?
Nope. Would you like the answer?
I would like a hint.
It sounds like a blending of we just had this gentleman on our Hangout, our YouTube Live when we talked about the Toy Story 4 trailer, and it sounds like a blending of his first and last name. It would be his last name first, then his first name.
I don't know.
Okay, it's DiGio Taglione.
Oh, yeah.
DiGio Taglione.
Never. I would never have guessed that one.
So if you ever get asked that question, anybody listening to this, Presto, the magician's last name, DiGio Taglione.
Yeah. Speaking of trivia.
Yes, I have one more for you. But
I know
you
do.
Hit me with one?
No. I'm going to wait till you're done.
Oh, okay.
You're going to a Pixar trivia night tomorrow night. So these questions hopefully will...
Yeah, so it's going to
be in there.
So it's going to be this. The trivia night is going to happen before you guys hear this because we're going to be releasing this on April 1st. But you're gonna hear this, after. So I'm really nervous because in case we've talked about it on here before, right?
I think so.
That I completely bombed
on one question though. You lost one question.
Well, and I doubted myself, and I
unfortunately wasn't there, and I won't be able to make tomorrow nights either.
Right. But we have to go to a Pixar trivia night. But here's the thing. Here's what stinks. We play HQ trivia as well. Mm-hmm. We won the Disney trivia.
Right.
We lost the Pixar trivia night.
Yeah. And what was that question? Because it was weird.
It was on Ratatouille. and they talk about what does Remy the rat when he's guiding the rats to go do work
Oh,
in
yeah.
the kitchen. They're like, which one of these does he not say?
Yeah.
And it's, when he's like, this group over to fish, this group over to
vegetables.
this vegetable. Yeah, yeah. So
that
we
was the
got
question.
that question wrong, and that was like, holy moly.
I think that was like question 10 or something like that.
It wasn't even that far in. I think it was like 7 or regardless.
Yeah.
We're not doing good on Pixar trivia. That's two. That's
kind of embarrassing.
It's 0 for 2, and it hurts bad.
Yeah, you lost on one question out of all of them. It was like a 2-hour, 3-hour trivia.
It was a 2-hour trivia, and I will say that there was probably like 15 to 20 teams, and up to 5 people on a team. And
you knew it. You just second guessed yourself.
I did, but I was very impressed. There was only one other team that kept up with. I'll say me, because the other people I went with didn't really know that much, but they kept up the whole time.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, these people know what is up. Like, their team name was, I think I mentioned it before, was like one of
the Surly Mermaids.
Yes, one of the boat names in
Nemo.
Finding Nemo. I'm like, wow, these people are hardcore into
Yeah,
it. So
that's
that's
a deep
great.
cut.
That's a real deep cut. I loved it. So anyways, yeah, doubted myself on that last one.
All right, so hit me with number 3.
Okay, number 3. There is a phrase on one of the posters at the beginning of the film. So you're panning in the room, in the dressing room, and you've got Presto in his cage, and he's trying to reach for the carrot, and his stomach is rumbling. There's a poster on the background that says the amazing Presto in his hat of blank fathoms. How many fathoms deep is Presto's hat said to be?
11.
No.
14.
Way more.
17.
Okay, it's 40.
Oh.
So obviously that's like,
That's
just
how old you are.
Oh, hey, now you'll never forget.
Yeah, no, I won't forget.
Well, at least for this year.
Yeah, for this year. A couple more months. Okay.
So, all right, you've got one for me?
I do.
All right, let's see how I do here.
And our last podcast, I said, oh, yeah, you're going to hit me with some trivia? I'm going to hit you with some Coco trivia.
Oh, that's true. You did say I'm going to quiz you on Coco.
Yes.
All right, I am ready.
Okay, now this one might be an easy one for you.
Do you have 2?
No, I only have one.
Oh, okay.
Well, because it could have been like, name all the characters. Could have been like, how many leaves are on the floor when Miguel steps into the ofrenda room?
That would be a fun fact. I would like that. And that would be a good one. But you can't name all the characters. That would be just crazy.
I can name them. But
All.
Okay. The Rivera family.
Okay, I was going to say all, like you're going to know like the guy's name that says like, it's the hot ticket.
No. No, but okay, so Coco was released on November 22nd.
Okay.
Only one other film has been released on November 22nd.
Bug's Life.
Name that film.
A Bug's Life.
No.
Okay, hang on.
Think about it.
Okay, all right. I thought it was A Bug's Life because I remember seeing that and it was snowy out.
Yeah. So November 22nd, Coco was released.
Okay.
Only one other Pixar film has been released on November 22nd.
Okay. Toy Story 1.
Yes.
Yeah, I had to think about it for a second, but that I was like, oh man.
I felt like it was relevant because you're going to Pixar in like 3 days.
Yeah, that's true.
2 days. Well, tomorrow if you're listening to this on Monday.
Yeah. So you're right. That is a relevant one, and I should have known that because I do know that it was November 22nd.
You know everything about Toy Story 1. That's why I thought it was going to be so easy.
Yeah, you're right. But I doubted myself slightly. But that's okay.
Your blood is Lightyear.
Yeah, I like that. I was actually looking at eBay tonight and for Buzz Lightyear figures, and there was one that...
What Buzz Lightyear figure don't we have?
Well, there's a lot that we don't. I mean, there's a lot of iterations of them. But there's one that I was very intrigued by, and it's a holiday one. So he's silver with red and green highlights, and he says Christmas phrases.
Oh, that's kind of cool.
It's from 99. So I started looking at it because...
That's when we started dating.
Hey-o.
Fun fact.
You should ask me that as the trivia question.
Yeah.
September 3rd.
Is that when it was released?
So, yeah, so it was actually really neat because I was like, maybe this is something we should look at. It came up in my Facebook marketplace, and the box was completely just ate up. So, I mean, don't you hate that when you guys are looking for like any collectibles or something like that, and you see something, you're like, oh, cool, and it's just completely roached.
I know. But we've had some really good buys. I mean, we have a full in the box that we need to give to Leo. Leo is our son.
Yeah.
the Bug's Life playset.
Well, that was because of Dan, if you remember again. So that was Dan, the Pixar fan, Dan Taylor, that he did a review of that Bug's Life playset, and we were so like, oh my gosh, why don't we have this? And it's super cool, the Ant Hill playset and everything.
I think we actually bought it before we even had Leo.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, Dan did that post in like 2014.
Yeah, we found one in the box, never opened.
Yeah, it still had like the original Kmart,
it's like a
price
Kmart
sticker.
Yeah.
So yeah, we've gotten some really good deals on there, but you got to search for them. But anyways, yeah, like the brand new in the box of this Buzz Lightyear one were like 120 to like 80. It was like all over the place.
Yeah.
But ones that were damaged were around like that 20 to 30 range. And I'm like, that's a neat one. It's made by Mattel though, so it wasn't a Thinkway one, but still cool.
Yeah, I'll have to YouTube it and see if I can like hear the phrases and
yeah, I want to know how Christmassy it is.
Yeah.
If not, we need to get that and do a review. Eh?
Jolly holidays.
Business expense.
Yeah. Oh no. We have a lot of toys in this house.
Okay, so what do you say? You want to get into some of the news? All right, so obviously we're excited to talk about on today's podcast because of Kelly Bonbright's interview. It's the bulk of what we're talking about. And before we get into it, we had actually 2 conversations with her. So you and I talked with her first, and then the following day, she's like, hey, I've got some more additional insights, and I had some more questions, and so it kind of worked out. But you were getting a haircut for Leo.
Yeah.
So it was one of those things where it was like, well, we got to kind of just fit this in. So there's like going to be a question or two that I punch in the middle of this where all of a sudden you'll be like, where's Julie?
Yeah. It's because I was with Leo getting his haircut.
Yeah.
Busy weekday.
Yeah, absolutely. So anyways, it's really fun. So I'm excited to have everybody hear a little bit more about that. But one of the first things we wanted to touch on, and again, as of March 31st, so the day before you're hearing this on April 1st, the Lightning McQueen's Racing Academy opened up. But let's just talk about that animatronic Lightning McQueen.
I know. I saw the YouTube video, and we're going to be doing a post on it.
As well as more information when it opens,
right,
too.
I kind of want to wait until it opens for sure so I can get like a more detailed
because it's so close
experience of what it's going to be. But Attractions Magazine did a cool YouTube video.
There's no audio of it yet.
No.
They put music over the top of it.
Right.
But you can see how he moves.
The animatronic in action and stuff. So I'm curious how this show is because I was actually in that building. That's where the Toy Story Land media preview holding area.
Yeah.
And like snacks and like media center was.
Okay.
And it's a big room. But I'm just curious how they have that set up because there were screens on the, out on the, walls up in the top. But I'm curious.
That's right. I remember a picture you took in there that showed all those.
Yeah. So I'm just curious because it's big, but it wasn't huge. And when you think of, these Disney attractions and like theaters experiences, I mean, they're big.
Yeah.
You can fit like 200. I mean, I guess 200 seats can, yeah. I don't know. It's just, it always seems smaller when I don't know.
Yeah. But I mean, the animatronics, how this thing moves Lightning moves fluid.
Yes.
Extremely fluid. And you've got to wonder, like, I need to talk to Jay Ward when I'm
You know what? You really do because
I need to set something up with him to see, well, hopefully if I can, to see if we can talk with him specifically about that because holy cow, that is so amazing looking. And like it's Lightning McQueen. He's on like the racing simulator from Cars 3 and like he looks like he's really starting to drive and like how he moves, like a normal car, if you were expecting it to go up on hydraulics, it would be more like Ramon, like where he's on hydraulics and it's like, and he,
right.
Oh, look, Von Dutch.
Yeah.
Like you expect it to be like that. But if you look at Lightning animated in the film, he's very fluid. Not like a car or robot
like
would
hips
move.
Almost like there's like that hippie motion
and like when he like just how he emotes and everything, it looks so awesome. I need to know how they did that. Did they really just get the weight out of him, out of the body of the vehicle, so that way it has to
be fully animatronic,
or are those some hefty like pistons that are pushing that thing around?
I don't know. It would be interesting to talk to another like theme park.
Oh yeah,
person at Pixar too.
Absolutely,
like Tasha, maybe.
I'm going to talk about that. We're going to figure it out.
Okay.
Because I just have to know now. Maybe we'll find out because, usually when they do like a release of something, the press will be able to access it and get some information as well. So maybe as of the 31st, when it's open, they'd have some other interviews with some of those folks potentially for that ride. So we're excited for some more.
And kind of off subject, but at Disneyland, Jesse's Critter Carousel has opened up today. I don't know if that's soft opening or if that's for sure open for good.
Yeah, I know that looks so cool.
I know they were testing it the other day, but that is open now.
Yeah.
And that's like amazing. That's like on Paradise Pier or Pixar. I almost said Paradise Pier.
Yep.
Pixar Pier. I really want to go there.
Well, of course. Of course. I mean, it's Pixar Pier. It's awesome. But Disney's California Adventure, where Cars Land is, they're also bringing, for the festivities of Lightning McQueen's Racing Academy opening up, they're bringing DJ. So the
in from California,
the racer,
to Florida,
the blue racer that has like the
he's
CD.
not a racer, he's
a tuner.
A tuner, yeah.
Yes, a tuner. So they're bringing him over to Walt Disney World for the grand opening. So that's really cool. I was going to say, I wonder why they chose him over like Red or something like that. But then I was like, well, he plays music and he's like a party.
There's also a courtyard in front of this building. And that's where they planted the Pizza Planet truck.
Yeah.
Our friend Marco.
Yep.
So he had his Pizza Planet truck parked there. And I think that's probably where DJ is going to be parked. I mean, DJ moves, but I think they'll probably make like a dance party festivities out of that. Possibly. That's kind of what
I mean, it would make total sense. Like, we're open. Come on, party people.
Yeah. I'm just so curious because like how you even get back to where this Lightning McQueen.
Yeah, because it's kind of back there.
It's behind. It's like to the side of Tower of Terror, but behind Aerosmith Rock and Roller Coaster.
Yeah.
So
it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, I'm curious.
Somebody will do a nice walkthrough.
I can't wait. I've got my Disney YouTubers that I watch.
All right, so let's talk about some Toy Story 4 news.
Okay.
So, we've obviously talked about the fact that I'm going to be going out there to the studio for a couple days to not only watch a little bit of the film like we have in the past, same kind of thing, but then also interview some of the artists that helped create this and other smart folks that put all this thing together. But yeah, I am getting mentally ready. I'm starting to research all of the people that are there. I'm coming up with questions. And what's funny is just to give a little bit of insight, whenever we go and we know the sessions that we're going to, so we get like a preview of, you're going to learn about how we made the characters or whatever it might be. And so who's going to be there. So you start thinking about, all right, what could a question be for this? And then what happens is while that session is going on, like 90% of your questions get answered.
So we always think of more questions as it's going. It's so fun and so stressful at the same time because we audio record these for the podcast and just for our geeky knowledge.
Right.
But we always want to have a question answered in each session.
100%.
And we've both been really good about it.
Yeah, I think almost
especially with interviews and stuff. I've only bombed one interview, but because I was so nervous and like, I don't know, I guess fangirling.
Yeah, I mean we've all done it. Sometimes it's just
it was Sharon I can't even say it. Sharon Callahan.
Yeah.
For Good Dinosaur. Yeah. I was like, oh hi.
Yeah. I know we've all done it. I had mine. It was Ralph Eggleston. Yeah. And essentially, instead of like getting into the details that I should have been getting into, I was just like, I love you. So I didn't do that really. But I mean, like, and he's a tough guy to hang with in the sense, not in terms of like being nice. He's extremely nice, but in terms of knowledge, like you better know your stuff. That he is a film connoisseur master. I mean, he researches them for visual elements that he then brings into, his works. So he studied it his life. So it's his life's work. So when you're talking to him about it, he's great, but it's tough to keep up sometimes because he's so knowledgeable. But that's where you want to be though, with talking to those people. Yeah.
So kind of off subject a little bit, but so we trade who goes for these events.
Right.
Now, I've met with Harley Jessup 2 times. Have you ever met with Harley Jessup? Because I know he's one of your
Yeah, all-time favorites.
Icon favorites.
Yeah, absolutely. His
artists,
his art
production
style,
designers.
His art style is 100% what I gravitate to. Every time I see anything that's
You've always been on a Ralph film.
always,
And
yeah.
I've always been on a Harley film.
It's obviously just, they're swapping at the same time.
Yeah.
They're on opposite production schedules at the same time we're going opposite. So we're probably following a similar path.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, it'll be interesting because you're going double now because
Right,
I
'cause
did
it was-
Toy Story Land.
Right. So it was Incredibles 2 and then this. Harley's line style is just amazing. And the colors that he uses. And I mean, that's not to say that what Ralph does isn't amazing either. As far as the pre-production work, though, that style that Harley does is just what I connect with. Ralph does a looser pastel or, other, I mean, it's digital now, but he does a looser style. And Harley's is more finished with a lot more like pencil line details. Anytime you're seeing a thin pencil line or a thin ink line,
It's the artist Carter.
Carter Goodrich. Yeah, well, he does a very specific pencil technique that I remember talking about. I think it might have been on here, but like his dad even gave him a hard time because Carter Goodrich's dad was an artist, and he was like, "You don't need to spend all this time." But Carter was like, "Yes, this is how my art comes out." And
Doesn't work at Pixar. He's just like
He's
contracted out.
yeah, he's kind of like he goes a lot of different places and helps create characters and feelings and things like that the characters bounce off of. He did some great work for Coco and Ratatouille and a whole bunch of films. But yeah, his pencil style is ridiculous. It's
Yeah.
so amazing.
I only bring up Harley because I know when you come back from these or when we talk the night of the both nights, you always talk about the production every time.
Yeah. Well, it's where the
And lighting.
Well, I talk about a lot of the different elements, but the reason why production catches me too is because it's where the birth of the visuals happens. Like the world. And I'm all about world building. You got to have that world that opens up and has all these grand moments, or it has to be true to form or whatever it is for that particular film. But there's just something about it. And to me, once you build the world, you're right, then you got to light it, which is why I get obsessed with those two areas, because if you can create a world and make it beautiful, which is through color and light, I'm sold.
Right.
So anyways, and we just watched Inside Out again, this last Friday
Night.
and just that whole opening scene where Riley is born and Joy shows up. And I remember Ralph talking about how, that was kind of like he thought of this scene and he just kind of went with it. And it was based on him and Pete Docter working together. And I can't not watch that scene and hear how Ralph talked about it when he was describing it and just feel his passion for that moment when it all kind of came together. So, I mean, obviously there's many other people that after Ralph have to actually create it. I mean, he's rough sketching it and putting color tones and all these other things in there, but oh man, those worlds.
Yeah.
And I love the characters too, but we all have
I do love the story. The story department, whenever we go to these events, the story department is always like my favorite. The story and characters.
It's energetic. I think that's what you get drawn to is, and you're actually going to hear
They're
that.
characters. The story artists are literally,
Yeah, they're character actors.
they're like comedians in their own right. It's fun. I don't know how they get anything done because they are just like a fun, lively group of people, but they're so focused at the same time.
Yeah.
I feel like, gosh, if I was like so goofy and stuff, I would get nothing done. I feel like that's my day every day.
And think about like how many pages, when they talk about how many pages, or when it was pages, but digital representations of pages that they do per day.
Right.
And that they get scrapped when they got to start an idea over or whatever it is. Because we talk about that with them all the time. It's hundreds and hundreds a day.
Or even with when you go to the characters and the character artists are just like, we just come in here and all I do is draw characters all day. And I'm just like, oh my, you have to have like some focus and some
skills.
Yeah. To be like, okay, maybe I'll go this direction. I just, those two have been my favorite when we go to these events.
Yeah. And I think you're finding those, the more vibrant people. And I'm not saying other people or other divisions are not, But if you're talking about like, a lighting artist or something, or an effects artist, they're not in as big of a group.
We do like effects, though. I think we both really like effects.
But this is where I'm going with the Kelly Bonbright interview too, is that when you were done with it, you're like, I want to do that too.
It is so true. And I actually told Kelly this too on our interview when we were done. I was like, seriously, because how they speak what they do with such passion. I'm like, oh my gosh, maybe I should tell you guys how it is being a mom. Because I love being a mom.
And everybody's going to want a kid.
It's the best. It's not for everybody. If you don't like it, if you don't want to be a mom, that's fine. But I love it.
And we were a hard no for a long time.
A hard no until I turned 31.
Yeah. And then you're like, yeah, maybe I will.
Maybe I will.
Yeah. So anyways, the other thing we wanted to talk about, just because it was so funny, we did the video of it, and we were super excited because Tony Hale, we were watching episodes of Veep. For years, you've told me, you need to watch Veep.
Yes.
And I'm like, I've started it before and then I didn't get into it. So I was like, I'm going to rewatch it. I start rewatching it.
Episode 1. Season 1.
Yeah.
So the very first episode.
Yeah. Here is
the very first line of Tony Hale, a.k.a. Forky, in Toy Story 4.
Yes.
Great.
Ma'am, this is a fork.
And you know that he's our tour guide. So
He's the tour guide.
That's
right. Yes,
remember?
yes,
Okay.
of course.
This is the new cornstarch fork, man. See, I got the cornstarch spoon,
Could we
too,
maybe
if you want.
tableware?
He talks about a fork and a spoon.
Yeah. How crazy is that? I was like, we have to do a post about this, don't we? And you were like, we need to. And we were super psyched because Tony Hale retweeted it after we posted it.
And he said, nice catch.
Nice catch. Yeah, he tweeted it out. And then another comedian that we like ended up jumping in and following us as well. So Paul Scheer. So that was really neat.
Yeah.
Like anything, we're just people too. And when we get recognized for doing this silly stuff that we do,
fans.
We're fans. And so it's cool. It's fun.
It does.
It made it exciting.
Yeah. It did. It like brightened our night.
Yeah. It's a lot of fun. So anyways, we wanted to talk about that because that clip is just
awesome.
hilarious.
It's funny. That his first line on the show, which is ending after 7 seasons this year. But
which is, ma'am, I have the cornstarch fork and I have the cornstarch spoon too if you want it.
Forky. A spork.
That's great. That's great. Okay, so since we've had our last podcast, we're not going to talk about too much of the Toy Story 4 items that came out, like the trailer. So there was the official trailer from our last podcast, the international trailer, 2 international posters were released.
Well, we also did our YouTube Live Hangout.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I was going to talk about because we
And if you missed our YouTube Live Hangout, I freaking love those ventriloquist dummies. I made a shirt. As soon as that trailer dropped, I made a shirt with it's not Benny, it's like his 2 little
Benson.
I'm sorry. I've got Lego Movie on the brain.
Benny. Oh,
Benny.
yeah. Wait, isn't that Charlie Day?
Yes.
Yeah, Charlie Day. Love Charlie Day.
Yeah, wrong franchise.
Yeah.
But
he voiced Art, so it comes back to Pixar.
You're right, it does.
Dan
Scanlon.
Monsters University, yes.
Which is the next film, Onward.
Yes.
2020. So,
you were talking about...
But yeah, the ventriloquist dummies, oh my goodness. I know we're not going to talk about it too much, but I freaking love those characters. They're so weird and spooky and awesome. I just love them.
All right.
That's all I'll say.
Like
I them a lot.
I said during the YouTube Live, you're very passionate about them.
Yeah, and I don't know why, because I don't like scary things, and they are kind of scary, but they're silly at the same point.
They're perfectly creepy.
Yeah.
Just enough to not be like, I'm not sleeping tonight, but...
Well, our son, Leo was a little like, who are those boys?
Yeah. Who are those boys? It's so great. So anyways, we're not going to dive into those too much. If you want to know more about, our thoughts of the trailer, we talked for over 2 hours about a 2-minute, 20-second
We'll link it
trailer
in the show notes.
So it'll be in the show notes. And like we always say, if you ever want the show notes, just go to pixarpost.com, click on the podcast button. And again, this is episode 64. So the next thing we want to talk about has been, we mentioned it briefly in the Hangout, but it's been one of those things that has come up a lot, which is Don Rickles.
A lot.
I feel like no matter how many times we go out of our way to say that Don Rickles is voicing Mr. Potato Head, the question comes up more than almost any other question.
Yes.
And, we're replying
multiple times daily.
Yes, we're replying to not only people on our site, but like if somebody's like, have you seen this? And then we're like, yes, we've seen it. It's amazing how much people are thinking about this. So Josh Cooley actually tweeted out after we had already said, like, Don Rickles is doing the voice. They're using his vocal tracks that were previously recorded for Toy Story 1, 2, 3.
Well, it's been even more now since the international trailer.
You mean as far as people inquiring about
Yes.
it? Yeah, absolutely. And then you've also got the work that he did with Toy Story The Time Forgot and other things like that. So they have
Source Rex.
They have a large library of things that they can pull from. And obviously it is exceedingly sad that, he wasn't able to get any new lines into this film. But so on the press release, when the official trailer was released, they also included some of the vocal cast. And in there, it mentioned Don Rickles. So we went out on a limb and we're like, yeah, Don Rickles. There's nobody else that's mentioned. If somebody else was voicing him, it would have been mentioned in here. So we said Don Rickles. And then luckily, Josh Cooley chimed in, the director of Toy Story 4, and said, hey, I've been noticing a lot of people saying some funny things about this.
I can only imagine.
And so he was obviously getting it a lot too. And so he said, no, it's sad, but he wasn't able to, but he is still the voice. They're doing the same thing they did with Paul Newman and Doc Hudson in Cars 3. So wanted to just at least address that because while we were prepping the show notes for this episode, another question came in.
We got an email.
Yeah, we got an email about it. So they wanted to know our thoughts on it. So anyways, I personally have no issue with it.
Oh, no.
I think it's exciting that they're still able to keep his true essence alive in the character. I think he's such a comedian.
They must have so many.
Imagine the outtakes.
Quips and.
I mean, if you've ever seen him on a talk show, like the host, like if he's on Jimmy Fallon or even back in the day when he was Leno, you can barely get a line out before he's like jumping on top of you with ad libs and insults and all these other things that he's so good at.
Yeah, and this is actually a perfect segue into the Script Supervisor
Fantastic.
role.
What did you want to say about it?
Well, this was I was most excited to talk about with Kelly, the Script Supervisor at Pixar, not only how many Script Supervisors are at Pixar, but what happens when an actor ad-libs a line.
Yeah.
Because
everything has to be translated back into the script.
Yeah. Now, totally different animal, but I've worked on some live action movie sets and I've seen what the Script Supervisor does. And
it's an intense role.
Especially, with live action directors and when the actors and extras have to move positions, what that Script Supervisor has to change in her Script Supervisor ginormous binder.
Yeah.
And that's the one thing I forgot to ask her, if she has like a ginormous binder that's like color coded.
Yeah.
Because especially when I worked on Oz, the Disney film Oz that came out, I think, what was it, 2011?
Oz the Great and Powerful.
No,
yeah.
2013.
Okay. You worked on it in 2012 though, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or 2011. I don't remember. It was a huge binder. It was color-coded. This poor girl had to do notes after notes because things kept changing. And I was speaking with her, and I'm just like, oh my gosh. And she's just like, I have to keep thinking. There was an assistant to her who was doing something else. And it's just like when you change, costumes, like someone could change their tie right away. You have to note it. They could not say their line could be like, I like to go boating, and they just say, I go boating. You have to she has to change that. And I'm just like, oh my.
The intense amount of attention to detail.
Yes. And
that you have to have is crazy.
I was so curious because with animation, it seems like it would be almost as intense, especially just because it's all vocal.
Yeah.
There's not as many notes to say, but there is, because then she has to, mark what could change per scene.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's just animated. It's not done live action.
Right.
So yeah, I was super excited to talk to Kelly.
Yeah. And the thing that, we talked to Kelly about too, is that this is actually like a really nice wrapper, if you will, around the whole Pixar pipeline project that we did, the interviews where we were interviewing a lot of the main people from stage to screen, not every department, but a lot of them.
And that was a great idea you had, by the way.
Well, thanks. But this is like a nice wrapper to that, because as you'll learn from listening to this interview with Kelly, which we got to get to.
I know.
We're really letting it all hang
tonight.
out chatty. Yeah.
It's late. We haven't slept and we're chatty.
But what it's good though is that the script supervisor is one of the first people hired on the project,
Which was interesting, but I get it.
It makes total sense. They got to be there throughout the entire process, and they have to know the script as good as or better than director and
she says
writers.
something very funny about that. I'm not going to say it because I'm going to let her say it, but it's very funny.
For sure, involving Brad Bird.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a good wrapper for it because they're there at the very beginning, they're there at the end, and they're making sure that everything is congruent throughout the entire process. So I think that's it's a good way to almost circle back on the Pixar Pipeline project, just to kind of, say, here's an overview of what one person is doing on everything for the film.
Yeah. And another question I meant to ask, besides if she has a giant binder that's color coded, is she basically living at the studio?
Oh, yeah.
Is she first to get there, last to leave? Because you would think
I'm sure
to
that
go
they
through everything I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm curious about that.
that's a good follow up. So we can maybe look into that.
Because I know in live action she basically lived there.
I think they all live there on live action.
Yeah.
I mean, those sets people you were saying they were there for a really
Except
long
the
time.
actors. The actors
Of course.
had to stay off set for 8 to 10 hours, no
Right.
matter what.
That's crazy.
Unless you were a child, then it was
Even longer.
longer.
Yeah.
Because you could only be on set for 10 hours a day. No.
It's
maybe.
less than
I
that,
think
isn't it?
8 maybe?
Yeah. It's
It was
something
8
pretty
or
low
10, I can't remember.
for kids. So anyways, what do you say we get into this interview? What you're going to learn, a better understanding of what the role is. You're going to get to know Kelly. We're going to talk about how the script gets broken down into small sections with some humorous titles sprinkled in there. And, how much of her role is involved with working with the vocal actors throughout the process. So let's go ahead and play that interview. Enjoy our interview with Kelly Bonbright. All right, everybody. Well, we're here with Kelly Bonbright, script supervisor at Pixar, and we are super excited to be able to discuss and dive into what the role is, a little bit more into Incredibles 2 and a couple other elements. So, hello, Kelly.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. So let's just dive right into it. So we can imagine there are a lot of different aspects of the film that you touch from the title of script supervisor. So let's start off by chatting about a little bit of an overview of what the script supervisor role is. So what does like an average day in the life look like for you throughout the process of the film? And I know that's a huge question to just start right off.
It's a huge question. I get it almost daily by people who both work at Pixar and outside in the world. It's a very mysterious job title. An average day, I think what I love most about this job is that not every day is the same.
Mm-hmm.
As a script soup, you're basically the main archivist of the entire script. And that can sound daunting. And so you're in charge of this entire document for the film. And what I do is when I join a film, I will separate it out into what we call sequences. Mm-hmm. So I break down the script into tiny little scenes. And that makes it really manageable. Otherwise, you're probably thinking, oh, she's in charge of this entire film script that's 180 pages long. How does she keep track of it? It's actually pretty easy once we break it down into those sequences. We end up numbering the sequences and then giving them funny titles.
Okay.
That kind of relate to the scene. So it makes tracking the script and making changes to the script really easy. And then another part of my job is to prep those sequences for recording. So we have 2 recording studios at Pixar. They're like world-class professional studios. And I am in charge of managing every single recording session.
Oh,
whether
cool.
whether it's the scratch actors, which are usually Pixar actors that I will cast. Mm-hmm. And sometimes we go outside and we cast outside actors for our main roles. And then eventually we bring in the production talent. So like Holly Hunter, for example, for Elastigirl. Mm-hmm. They will come to Pixar and use our facilities. And I'm in charge of, all those recording sessions, prepping the scripts for the actor, coming up with a full agenda for that session. And then I'm making sure that the director and the writer who's sitting next to me in the session is also on the same page. Yeah, it's really kind of making sure that recording session goes smoothly. I'm getting editorial the dialogue that they need to start cutting their scenes. So that's kind of like a weekly thing. Like I'm constantly in recording sessions every single week, getting dialogue for all these sequences to then for editorial to then plug them into their storyboards and make like an actual movie out of it.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. So there's a lot of parts. And then there's even a part to this job where I work with the legal team at Pixar in flagging certain items in the script that might be a copyright concern. All the character names get vetted, make sure those are good with legal. So there's a whole other legal component to the Script Soup role.
Ooh, okay. Yeah, talk about that for a little bit more. Like, what are they looking for when they're talking about, like, looking for copyright elements?
Yeah, I would not have imagined that that's part of one of your roles.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah, no.
I actually like it. I think it's fun. It's cool to, like, dig through the script and find, like, the title of a building that might be an issue. Or like all the character names in a film will go to legal and it'll go through their process. And they actually do research. They will, Bob Parr, let's say. They will, I think, research the name Bob Parr. And I think you have to have more than 3 people in the world named Bob Parr for it to pass. Which is really crazy. I think we have searched character names before, and it ended up that like one person had the name, and they had to call that person and get permission to use the name in the film. I think they were like, sure, I'd be honored. But yeah, just funny things like that. I mean, they really want you to submit every single name, the name of a school or a product. You have to cover your bases because you just never know.
That's awesome.
We have a lot of items in our films, as you know, and we're so detail oriented that anybody could flag something in one of our movies.
Wow, that's definitely an effort in itself. Also, just out of curiosity, you mentioned, some of the earlier comments about some of those funny sequence names that you titled those. And, one of them that came to our mind was the sequence with Violet at the Happy Platter restaurant where the water comes blowing out of her nose. I mean, our son absolutely loves it. He's watched that. I can't even tell you how many times because he just can't even, he freeze frames it with that nose and the water coming out and her eyes all crazy. And that was a roaring moment for everybody in the theater too. So do you remember what that scene was named?
That scene was called Vi Embarrassed.
Uh-huh.
So obviously she's embarrassed by Tony Reidinger. And then, we have a whole list of other really cool names that we named our sequences. That moment when Violet kind of brandishes her super suit in the kitchen sink.
Oh, yeah.
At home.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sequence is called Breakfast Blow Up.
Nice.
Very appropriate.
Yes, of course.
The scene where Bob is doing math with Dash at home, that's called Morning Math.
Uh-huh.
So that's very cute.
Uh-huh.
And then that really great scene where Bob and Lucius are having trouble taming Jack Jack with all the cookies.
Yes.
That we titled Cookie Num Num.
It makes total sense.
So we would actually have editorial meetings where we would talk about the Cookie Num Num scene and all these other scenes. And it's just funny having these conversations with these titles kind of swirling around.
What's funny is now that you've seen the movie, obviously in theaters and on home release and everything, as you're watching it, are you kind of thinking through the scene names, or are you able to kind of step back and just enjoy it for the film it is?
No, I'm thinking about all the scene names and every other detail that I remembered from recording the lines. It's so funny. I can, like, if, Holly Hunter or Samuel L. Jackson is, giving a line, I'll actually remember the session, where the session was. It gets down to that much detail.
Of course. I mean, I'm sure it would. You've been engulfed in it for so many years that, you know, when you're seeing this thing out there, it had to have been exciting, though, watching it in the theater with everybody and getting their reactions to everything, too, right?
Absolutely. And I even went to New York for a sabbatical after Incredibles 2, and I just caught it so that I could see it in New York City in front of different audiences. So I actually saw the movie in New York like maybe 5 times, going to different theaters in New York City and Brooklyn and seeing people's reactions. I was totally nerding out, but it was so great to just see, like, you know, people on the other side of the country enjoying this film and seeing the reaction.
That's awesome. That's awesome. What was the scene that consistently got everybody roaring?
Definitely raccoon fight.
Oh, of
for
course.
Sure.
Of course.
Yeah, I mean, that's such a classic, and it's so unexpected, and the timing of it is really great because it's sort of in the middle of the film, so you're like, whoa, what's going on here? Like,
yeah, that's absolutely one of our favorites as well, for sure. I actually described this to you separately, but it's one of those. I grew up in that Looney Tunes phase where like everything I watched was Looney Tunes, and that has that same kind of slapsticky feel where it's unexpected, it's big, it's like you just don't expect a baby to be doing that, to be fighting and doing those things. And it's great that at the end that Bob even steps back in and says there's not a scratch on him, because you start to worry about that.
Right.
So much fun.
Yeah, that was a great Teddy Newton scene.
Yeah, we heard that was actually one that was cut from that was going to be originally slated for the first film, but then couldn't have happened based on all the technical advancements and things that they wanted to do at that time. Right, and the sequel gave Brad the opportunity to weave it back into the story. Yeah, such a cool little callback to the original. So what are some of those other scenes that, if you're able to talk about them, that were maybe even some of those titles that are from omitted scenes or scenes that got cut? Yeah, a lot of them are kind of Bob-centric. So one of them is diaper trouble. Okay. So this was a fun scene where Bob has this huge box of diapers, and he's kind of running through that house that has all those fancy water features. Mm-hmm. And he ends up falling into the water feature with the box of diapers, and the diapers like blow up and expand in the water around him. Sure, because they're absorbing everything. Because they're absorbing the water. So that was diaper trouble. The other one was struggling Bob. This is when he's just at his worst. I mean, he's just struggling to be a parent. And he leaves Violet and Dash home to babysit Jack, and he kind of goes out into the night and decides to just like destroys this building to get his frustrations out. Yeah. That was not in the film. We had a total of 121 omitted sequences in the film. Wow. So that's a lot of story sequences kind of thrown out, and a lot of idea generation that came out during the 3 years of the film. So that was a lot of sequences to keep track of. In the final Incredibles 2, there were 59 story sequences total. Wow. So it's still a big number. Yeah, how does that compare to other releases, if you're aware, as far as, you know, the number of story sequences or even the number of omitted sequences? So original Incredibles had 49 story sequences. Coco had 29, and Cars 3 had 26. So I would say Incredibles 2 is on the higher end of the story sequence spectrum. Definitely. I mean, there's a lot of moving parts. There's the story elements going back and forth. It's also a longer movie than a lot of other ones. Mm-hmm. I mean, Cars 3 is up there too, but it's a longer movie, so it makes sense that it would have some more. But that's actually really interesting, the differences in the story sequences. Mm-hmm. Yep. I think it's reflective of how many times it's bouncing back and forth between the main story and subplots and everything like that. Because with Coco, you said was 49, right? Yes. Yeah, so Coco makes sense because they're 29. No, Coco had 29. Oh, Coco had 29. Yeah. Wow. So they really... that was tight.
It was tight, and I think Lee just likes that. I think he likes to work tighter, whereas Brad actually works. He likes more sequences with and they're shorter, so it's kind of very actiony if they're shorter sequences.
Yeah, man, I love the difference between the directors too. This is where you get those.
Oh yeah,
this is where those fans can come in and just really soak all this stuff up, and why somebody has this feeling like, oh, I really like Lee Unkeridge's work, or I really like Brad Bird's work. There's just somehow or another these differences come out, and a lot of times I don't think people can tactually put a reason for it, but these might be some of those reasons as far as just how they structure the story and how they flow through the process. It's so neat.
Yeah, everyone's different. Yeah, and my favorite thing about Brad is that he is such a master at getting a line read out of an actor.
Now, is that because of how he emotes and how he pulls people along with him, or what do you see as the secrets of what makes him so much, just to be able to pull that out easily?
I think he's just a very emotive person. And as you know, he's the voice of E. He's a voice actor himself. So I think he kind of infuses his own acting abilities into his actors. And he knows what he wants. He's very decisive. So he knows what that character is thinking and the kind of read that he wants from that character. And he will work with the actor to bring it out. It's magic. I mean, just watching it, being in the room with him is just invaluable.
Yeah. And I don't know how he doesn't just literally at the end of the day just completely fall over and crash and go to sleep, because he just puts it all out there every minute of every day. So cool. Any other interesting fun facts that you had or thought of?
Yeah. So we had a total of 84 production recording sessions and then a total of 142 scratch recording sessions. So that's a lot of sessions over the course of a few years. So totaling 226.
Wow.
And yeah, I think that's a lot, and I feel like other films might even be more.
Okay.
So you can imagine it's hundreds of recording sessions for these movies.
Yeah, absolutely. Love it.
So how many script supervisors are there within the studio?
Well, it's crazy you ask because there's only 6 of us.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, we're each assigned to a show, and there's one script soup for the show at all times. It would be really hard to split your time between different shows because you really have to be hyper-focused on your one show.
Oh, yeah.
Well, and you start working on them for years.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the script soup is usually the first one hired on a show. I definitely was one of the first hired onto I2. I think I was there even before Brad. And then, yeah,
That's some bragging rights.
Yeah.
I know. Yeah, I'm here before Brad Bird. And then I was actually one of the first ones hired on this new show I'm working on. So, which makes sense. I mean, you have to have a script before you can start recording.
So with Incredibles 2 being your first film within the script supervisor role, talk a bit about working alongside, because you kind of talked about the dynamics of, you're there early working along with the director, Brad Bird, and then other key people that you're involved with. Talk about that process, and do you have animation dailies, or is it just because you're in such constant communication, you're in touch with all those elements? Yeah,
I'm in touch with the director daily. I'm in producer check-ins every week. I'm in recording sessions with the director. I would say I'm mostly in recording sessions. I wouldn't say I've gone to animation dailies, but just for my own interest. I'm not really in those meetings per se. I'm definitely in story reviews every week because that's where that's when a story artist is pitching their sequence. They might have different line suggestions that then I will input into my script before recording. So I have to be there to kind of flag dialogue notes. And then on the back end, I'm privy to the editorial reviews. I don't actually sit in them because they like to keep that room small with the editor. I will then get dialogue notes out of editorial as well. We want to get this next time in recording. So I'm constantly between story and edit getting new lines to then record.
So with the dialogue changing for you said the editor and the story artist, what about when an actor improvises?
Yeah, there's a lot of actor improv, and it's totally fine. We assign it. So Every line of dialogue is assigned a number, and it goes into a database, a script database. And if an actor improvs, I will just give it a new line number for my editorial team. And that's how we keep track of it. And I will write down the actual ad lib that the actor did, and I will then add it to the script after the session. So it's no problem that there's, ad libs and things like that. And then eventually all that dialogue is available during an editorial review. And that's when the director and the editor will then listen to those ad libs and decide, do we want to put it in the cut or do we just want to go with the original line? We have a ton of lines to choose from at a given time.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fun. With Brad, he would come into recording sessions, with Holly Hunter, Craig T. Nelson, and he would write it would be lunch, and then we would come back and do recording, and he would write new lines on a napkin and be like, Craig, Holly, can you just read this line? I just thought about it at lunch. So I was so used to funneling like napkin lines during production recording. And that happens a lot. I mean, like people are always thinking of, we call them alts, like alternate lines to get, because when you're with these fabulous actors, like you really want to get the most out of them.
Of course.
Yeah. So I got a lot of napkins from Brad.
They're now in the archives.
Yeah, no, I think I actually gave them to archives.
Did you?
Yeah, I did.
So as far as, the we talked a little bit about, the actors, the vocal actors making some of those changes. How about, this is just an off the cuff question I'm thinking of. How about you mentioned as far as scheduling the scratch vocals as well, so those temporary tracks. I assume Brad is not there when you're doing just the scratch vocals, correct?
No, he's there the entire time.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, the director is directing the scratch and the production.
Okay, perfect.
I would not have known that.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, at least on the shows I've worked on, it's been only directors. I'd say if the director is super busy or can't direct, they'll advocate that like the head of story directs in their place or the writer directs.
Yeah.
But it's usually it's a big priority that the director is always directing scratch and production.
Oh.
And I think that's smart because it kind of keeps the acting consistent, because the acting and the line reads are so important when you're making films, like even from the beginning, just to get the tone right. So, and that the director has what they want in their head. Nobody else does. So they're the only ones that can really get those line reads out of the actor.
Yeah, that's a great insight.
Yeah.
So is there a time that one of those scratch sessions is going on and Brad maybe just jumped in and was like, we don't need to get another actor for this? Like, how do you guys know when you want to convert a scratch one into an actual, like a voice actor that you're going to hire to bring in?
Uh-huh. Well, it's funny you asked that because I was given a lot of freedom to cast a lot of scratch actors on the fly.
Yeah.
And we have a really cool database of Pixar actors that have done auditions, and you can listen to all their auditions and cast what you need based on that. So I would do that for I2 a lot, just for small roles, nothing super major.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
And two of the people I casted made it into the final cut.
Ooh, and who were they?
Because Chad Brentley.
Okay.
Adam Gates, he works here. Oh, Victor Cachet, he was like the billionaire guy with the Incredibile.
Oh, yeah.
He was a side character, but they both work at Pixar, and it was cool that like two guys that I casted for Scratch like eventually made it to the final movie, and Brad really liked them, and so it happens a lot. I even made it into the film.
Ooh.
But it's kind of funny because I was watching the movie with my mom in the theater, and I'm basically just a girl screaming on the highway as Elastigirl goes by in the Elasticycle.
Yeah.
It's like
okay.
it's like there's like college kids in a convertible.
Yeah.
And I'm just screaming like, woo, hey Elastigirl. And like I didn't tell my mom a thing about it. And we're watching the movie, and she's like, was that you screaming?
Moms
and
know.
I was like, what? How can you tell? Like, it's loud. Like, the scene is really loud. Like, I feel like I can't even hear myself in the scene. And then my mom, like, pinpoints
That's amazing.
That was my voice.
That's hilarious. Yeah, because you've got the music going, you've got the sound of the cars and the motorcycle, and then the main person that's like, hey, it's Elastigirl.
Yeah.
Yeah, who was actually my script PA. So my script PA, Grace Geller, is the voice of that girl.
Okay.
And then I'm the girl next to her screaming.
That's awesome.
It's just funny. And that was like just we didn't plan that. It just like ended up being in the film.
That's still a nice little extra added bonus there for sure. That's neat.
Yeah,
that's
totally.
like one of TJ's dreams.
Yeah, we've talked about it on some of these other podcasts.
We've gone into the studio, like the recording studio, and he's just like, oh my gosh.
Yeah,
leave me here.
I was lucky to get into the
so
booth at one point. Yeah, it was so neat just seeing everything. You know, you mentioned early on too, it's hilarious. You're talking about like, we split it up into scenes. It makes it pretty easy because we can chunk it out this way. It still doesn't sound any bit easy to me.
No.
I know. I thought about that when I said that. I'm like, yeah, I don't think anyone's going to think this is easy. I mean, no, it's not. I mean, it's a lot of pages of dialogue that you're keeping track of. You have to have, for this job, you have to be so hyper organized. I mean, every script file has to be dated, titled a certain way, or else it can just become a huge mess really fast.
Yeah.
If you are not diligent with your housekeeping, your file keeping, your file naming convention, it could just become a disaster. And then I have an excellent memory. I have like a photographic memory. And when I was talking to the script soups the other day about how we all have these like really crazy memories. And I think that's what makes us so great at the job.
You have to.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, it really helps to have this like really keen memory sense.
Oh, okay. So yeah, this is a perfect segue to let's get to know you a little bit more. So let's talk about, your journey to Pixar. When did you start? How did you get there? And then, kind of sub to that. You were in a different position prior to this. So how did you go from being in the consumer products group to then focusing in the script supervisor role, which sounds like an darn ideal role?
It was, yeah. So I started Pixar a whopping 15 years ago, which is so crazy.
That is crazy.
I was 12. No, I was not 12. I was like fresh out of college. I was an art major in college. I was also a communications writing major. So I was kind of a shoo-in for I started as an intern in marketing and consumer products. And that was 2004. So that was the summer before the original Incredibles was about to be released. So it was really cool. I sat in a pod in the main building of Pixar. And I had this tiny little desk in the middle of some cubicles. I had never had a full-time job in my life. I'm like probably 22. And Brad Bird would come into our pod and approve, Incredibles movie posters, book covers, video game ads. And I'm like, who is this guy? Who is this zany, like loud, funny guy coming into the pod every week? And it was Brad.
Yeah.
And I thought, I'm sitting there and I'm like, I like this guy. Like I want to work for this guy one day. And lo and behold, like 12 years later, I'm his script supervisor. And so it was just like so full circle. But going back, so I was an intern. And then I became a consumer products assistant, so like a production assistant, but in consumer products. And within that department, it was toys, books, and video games. Mm-hmm. And so it was fantastic. It was so great. I stayed there for 11 years.
Wow.
Yeah, and I went into publishing specifically. So I was a publishing coordinator for a really long time. I was project managing and editing the Art of books that you're probably really familiar with.
Probably. Yeah, we love those.
Yeah, I've worked on probably every single one of those. Pixarpedia.
Mm-hmm.
The Pixar Treasures book is a really great one.
Absolutely.
The Art of Pixar color scripts I was heavily involved with. The Art of Funny book is really cool.
Yes, we talk about that one a lot. We reference that one a lot.
That was like my baby project. I worked on that book for years. It took a really long time to compile all of that.
I bet. I mean,
stuff.
obviously having to go through all those years of films and everything.
Oh, I know. Yeah, and I got to go to the archives and kind of sift through all the story gags.
Oh
And
my gosh, we love the archives.
oh, it's so great. And Christine, I don't know if you've met Christine Freeman. But
Absolutely.
Yeah. Oh,
Both
yeah,
of
we've
us
met
have.
her.
Yeah.
yeah, she's a doll. I love her.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was such a good, because I was in publishing for so long and I was editing books and I was also meeting with like production designers and producers and kind of high level people at the studio all the time. It was such a good training ground for being a script soup.
Okay.
And then it all kind of worked out. I mean, I had to go through the regular process as anybody from the outside. I had to put together a cover letter, submit my resume, interview. So it wasn't like I was just given the role. I actually did formally apply for it.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's actually important to hear, that even though you work within the studio, you're applying.
Absolutely.
Like an outsider is applying.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. You are not given jobs here. Yeah, you kind of have to work for it, you know?
I think that makes sense. I mean, we hear that from anybody that we talk to, that, you know, they've been denied at, you know, being employed at Pixar. And, you know, Pixar is one of those places that there's no shortage of great talent that's trying to get in there. Mm-hmm. So yeah,
right.
you've got to show you've got the chops, you've got to put in the time and have that passion for whatever project or role you're going for. So that makes total sense.
Yes.
We were going to ask you what are like the top 3 things that somebody that's moving into the script supervisor role would be, but I kind of feel like it would be insane organization, a great memory,
and attention to detail.
Yeah. What else?
Yeah.
What else would you say to that?
Definitely really strong grammar and wordsmithing skills.
Okay. Yep.
Okay.
Which I got from publishing. I love words. I'm kind of a word nerd. Yeah, it just helps because sometimes, you know, a writer will submit pages for a scene and then it kind of drastically changes in story or edit. And you kind of have to transcribe and write in fill in action if the writer hasn't done it. So you kind of have to think like a writer and like fill in the blanks a little bit. And sometimes you might be asked to come up with an alternative dialogue line. So you really have to have that writer editor mindset day in and day out. So taking classes in, you know, copy editing would be really great for someone interested in script. General writing classes, creative writing. It doesn't necessarily have to be screenwriting. I had no screenwriting experience before this job. It was just purely writing and editorial stuff that I had been working on. So you definitely don't need to be like a aspiring screenwriter in any way to be a script soup.
Well, that's good to know. Obviously, thank you for taking the time and chatting with us and for helping us understand a little bit more of it. And then obviously everybody else that's going to listen to this as well. So we thank you very much, Kelly.
Thank you so much. This was really great.
All right, so that was the interview with Kelly Bonbright. What did, you know, obviously, hopefully you guys enjoyed it as much as we did. Being able to talk to Kelly was a great honor, like it is when we get to talk to many of these creators of these projects. But what were some of the things that were your favorite moments, Julie, from the interview?
Oh, I just love everything. I
love everything.
I do. I mean,
Hippie.
I kind of am. I love the passion.
Yeah.
And you kind of weren't surprised of this when we were speaking with her. Yeah. But when I said, like, I think that's really important for, you know, our viewers, our listeners to hear that even though she works in the studio, she basically had to apply for this position by doing the cover letter, the application process, sending in her resume. Like, you're not given like, oh, just because you still work here, maybe you're front of the line kind of thing, that it was like a process that she wasn't like, oh, you don't have to apply. Let's just like interview. I think that's important.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned that during the interview too, that it was like, you just think if I could only just make it in Pixar, you know, even if it was at this role, I could do this or I could go move to that. But it's whenever you're bouncing around, you got to reapply for it. So nothing is ever given.
No.
You got to earn it. So yeah, that's cool. You also mentioned like as far as like all just like the interest, and we have already kind of talked about it with like the scratch vocals and then the vocal actors and everything like that.
Yes.
The involvement there.
Yes, I love that. And I was surprised too that like I shouldn't be surprised because she's a script supervisor, so she has to basically touch every single part development of the film.
Right.
But how much of the scratch vocals like well, we knew Pixar, like Pixarians are like do scratch vocals.
Yeah.
Like you can always hear like Austin Madison's voice. And
It's great.
Kelsey Mann's voice.
Yeah.
You can always pick them out.
And obviously everybody knows Peter Sohn.
Yeah. Oh, Peter Sohn.
Because he's done so many different voices.
But it was interesting to hear like, I mean, how much, and she's like, I was able to do it. And then so-and-so was able to do it. I mean, I wish she could have seen like your face. You had like the biggest, goofiest, like little kid in a candy shop.
Excited.
Yes, because I know that's like a dream of yours.
Yeah, we've talked about it on here a lot. We told her about it. Like
I know, because I know we've been lucky enough to go into the recording studio, not record anything, but just like
just to see it.
See it and see like
just
the red
visually
wall.
See, everybody's signatures when they do the voices. There's a wall outside of it where people autograph it.
Oh my gosh. But like, I seriously think you would faint if they were like, why don't you do a scratch vocal on this? I think you would just be like, that's it.
Well,
my life is complete.
Well, I mean, anything in my life from my childhood on, when I was watching anything animated, it was always, how do I get to be a part of it? And the voices, because when I was a kid, I always liked doing sound effects and voices and all those things.
And you're so good at sound effects.
Well,
I think so.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
You think I'm great at everything, though. Like I think you're great at everything.
See, we're a good team.
That's right. But yeah, I've always like done those types of things, and it works out really. Like where it's paid off is when we're reading kids' books or children's young adult books to Leo, because I get to do all the interactive voices.
Well, you emphasize on sound effects, and Mommy's like, "Ooh, the ice is cracking, crack." Like,
yeah, I'll get into it.
My throat doesn't get like spitty enough to like make sound effects, I guess.
Gross. So yeah, I'll do like like an old radio show. Like I'll actually like make it 4D. Like I'll run my fingers like up his, like I'll be like up his back or whatever, and like all these other kind of funny things when those moments happen.
It's like the Bugs Life theater.
Yeah. Yeah, where they're running under you.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've always just been enthralled by anything animation. I talked about it before that The Art of Animation by Bob Thomas was the first book that I ever bought with my own money. Actually, I shouldn't say that. The very first one was about dinosaurs, and I bought it at Kmart. But the first one that like when I was old enough to really read a book and get it was that Art of Animation book. So it's always been a passion, and doing the voices, I was always amazed. I mean, I have a piece of art behind that door that I'm pointing to in the corner here, which is for Mel Blanc, doing the voices for Looney Tunes, because that's why I like Presto. It's Looney Tunes, basically. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, yeah, it's been part of my life, and, thinking about, as a passion, and thinking about the voices and the animators and everything. That's why I feel super lucky that you had an idea to do this website, which led us to be able to have this podcast, which I was like, you wanted the website. I want to do some cool recording. Maybe like everything we just stumbled across into this. We don't need to go down this road now because we're supposed to be talking about like Kelly, but yeah, everything kind of just happened, and it's super cool, and it's a lot of fun, and
it snowballed into something fun. And what's great about it is we do it together, because like I obviously like it too. It's yeah. I mean, obviously you grew up the total like Disney, beyond Disney nerd. Yeah, I was a I mean, so you had all those, not only going to the park experiences, but your mom was big on buying every VHS in the clamshells. Every VHS, every plush toy. I mean, Disney. Yeah, she was big on that. So, I mean, we were both immersed in it like a lot of people are. But just got lucky and we feel super lucky every day that we get to have any connection at all to talk to Pixar artists. We don't claim to be any part of it. No. We don't claim to be as even close to scratching the surface as any of them are. No. But for us to be able to, go to the studio,
and share some of this information with other people that have the same or similar passions
And
as
what's
we do
crazy
is exciting.
Is we've talked about this before, but we have met some of our like best friends from doing the site
Absolutely.
that we talk to like daily, semi-daily,
Yeah.
and we've never met them in person.
Well, obviously we mentioned,
We
many
met
times
a couple
Dan.
people. Yeah.
We mentioned Dan the Pixar fan.
Yeah,
never
we've
met him in
never met
person.
Yeah.
Been talking to him for like 6
7
years.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
He's
7
like
because
one of our greatest friends.
it's crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy. So, well, what do you think? Does that wrap up the episode?
Yes, I think so.
All right. So we had some fun, obviously, talking. So hopefully you guys like some of this extra casual conversation that we threw in tonight.
We were very chatty
We should just
tonight.
record all these at like 1 a.m.
I know.
So that about wraps up this episode of the Pixar Post podcast. Be sure to follow us on all of our social media channels, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Pinterest, and subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Overcast, or wherever you get your podcasts. Lastly, if you like today's show, let us know. Rate us on Apple Podcasts, leave a comment on our site, or send us an email at info@pixarpost.com. Signing off as usual, I'm TJ.
And I'm Julie.
And be sure to stay tuned to pixarpost.com all week for the latest Pixar news. Bye-bye.